Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's get started off without any further ado. Before I start off with the presentation, I would like to know if all of you can hear me clearly and you can see my screen as well. So you could indicate to me on the chat whether you can hear me clearly and see my screen, and then I'll proceed accordingly. Okay, great, thank you. So most of you can hear me clearly, so I'm assuming all of the others can as well. So that's good. So my name is Aditya, and today we'll be touching base upon a few very important things in the world of data science. And our topic for today is data analytics with Excel and Power BI. We're doing this in collaboration with Informatics Academy in Singapore, and I'll give you their contact details towards the end as well. If you need any further information from regarding the course and further things. So before we begin, a little bit about just about me is I am a co-founder of one of startups in Singapore, which is called Exaltius, and we together with Informatics Academy we conduct a lot of trainings in the data science area in Singapore and online. So if any of you at any point in time would like to know more, just reach out to us and we'll share our contact details right at the end. Now, before we begin, I'd like all of you to take help me out and take part in a small survey. And the reason we're going to do this survey is to basically understand a few things about what analytics is, what essentially we're going to be doing today. And in order to do that, I would like all of you to head to this link which you see up on the screen, and you can key in the analytics key there. So as soon as you enter the link, you'll see the key there, or you can scan the the QR code as well there. So either one of them would work. So I'll give you guys like a couple of options there, and then you can essentially log in. Okay, so I'm assuming all of you are here. And let's get on with the survey. So as part of the survey, we're going to have 3 questions. And the 3 questions are going to be just very simple, straightforward questions. You just choose the right option when it, choose your option when it comes up on the screen. Okay. So the first question is, how energized are you feeling today? So, if you are at this link, you'll be able to, you get a few options on the screen. So you can just click that and it'll come up here. So, I'd expect a lot of answers coming up. You can still join by using the link on the left hand side of the screen. So if you have missed out, you can still join using that. Okay, awesome. I have about 9 answers. Some of you are energized. Some of you, I think, need a shot of coffee. So either ways, I think it's good to see a wide spread. It's about 6.6 being the average score of how energized you are. That's great. So how about the next question? So let me put forward the next question. So the next question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grow up? So if you could just, again, you'll get a text box. It's free text. Key your answers there up on the chat, and then up on that text box, and then it'll come up here on the screen. Housewife, vet, doctor, teacher. Okay, so a lot of people want to be teachers. A lot of people want to be engineers, wanted to be vets. Okay, that's awesome to see. Any other coming in? Any other surprise ones coming in? Somebody wanted to be smart. Okay, I'm pretty sure you're already smart, so I think you've achieved your goal by just typing in that answer there. Okay, thanks for giving me those queries. Okay, no, okay, cool. Just give me a sec while I bring up the last option, last two questions. The next question is, what format of learning would you prefer? Would you prefer online format of learning? Do you prefer the face-to-face format of learning? Okay, so most of you prefer the face-to-face format of learning. But you're still here, right? So you still like the online format, okay? Okay, good. Okay, great. Thank you for giving me your answers. And the last question I have for you as part of this survey is this one. Do you prefer learning on the weekdays or weekends? When do you prefer learning? So based on your schedules, based on your moods, which is the most appropriate learning day for you? Okay, we have it equally split at this point. Okay, weekdays. Okay. Okay, awesome. A lot of you prefer learning on the weekdays, some of you on the weekends. That's good. Many people like to relax on the weekends, so they say no learning. So let's stick to the weekdays. Okay, good. So thank you for helping me out by participating in that. The basic idea which I wanted to bring across was I'm not doing this survey for any internal requirement. The reason I'm doing it is because one of the things I wanted you to notice is that all of the different questions came up in different forms of representation. And by doing this, I understood what you wanted, I understood your needs, and I understood a few things about you, right? So the basic idea of me being able to understand you through this method is called data analytics. And the different ways I'm using to achieve that is through graphical methods like what you see on the screen, and by asking you questions, by telling you a story that I want to know more about you. So those are the two methods which are generally employed when doing analytics as well, and we'll see that as we go into the presentation and as we go into the other parts of the uh, the demo and all of those things. So the next question to ask is, how much data do we create every single day, right? Because all of us are constantly creating data, and all of us need to know how much of that is created. The value is staggering, right? The number which you see is quite large. It's about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. And 2.5 quintillion bytes of data is not less. It's created by us using our phones, by us using various other devices, social media, and so on. And that's how we create so much of data every single day. And people often say data is the new oil, but this saying has changed. The presentation needs to be updated for sure. Data has surpassed being the oil. Data is now the king, because without data a lot of things cannot be achieved. Be it any organization, be it any industry, be it any situation, data is what empowers organizations and people. But what is data about? Data is basically a collection of facts or numbers. So there's anything which is represented in various forms is data, right? And it could be of various types, it could be of various shapes and sizes. It doesn't matter. At the end, data is data, and all of us need data to empower people in our organization and individuals. But the question is, all of us have data, but what can we do with it? That's the question which, we all need to answer. From the data, we can do, many things, but, there are four important things which I'd like to specifically point out. The first one is that you can do exploratory data analysis, meaning you can take the data, you can analyze them, you can say, okay, total sales for March was so much. This is the profit we made. These are the number of customers. It's simple exploratory analysis. We can derive useful insights by saying, 20% of our customers did not um, meet our requirements or meet our expectations of profit. You can create reports and dashboards for higher management and for yourself. This is basically giving you information put together under one hood. We'll talk more about this. We'll see how we can make this as well. And the last one is that you can derive new inferences, meaning, okay, how can we better the future using the data we have today? What are some of the decisions we can take? Now, all of this is done through something known as analytics. And analytics is in a very broad term, but if I put it to a very raw definition, it's nothing but finding meaningful patterns in the data. Right? It just implies that you have some data. I need to find something from it. Can I derive something meaningful? Right? That's what analytics is all about. It can be done through various means. Now, analytics is not new. Okay, it's been there since a very long time. The terms have changed, but the goals haven't. Now, earlier in the days when analytics just began, we generally used to ask a question about what happened, and we were very satisfied with that. But curious human beings as we are, we said, okay, you know what? I'm not satisfied with what happened anymore. I'm going to ask further questions. Then we started asking, why did something happen? Right? So apart from the what, we started asking the why. The next thing we started asking was, what will happen in the future? And so we said, okay, why is not enough? We need to know the future now. And then later we started asking questions like, what is the best that could happen? So, from whatever could happen, can we take the best decision and provide that to the management? Now, all of this was basically done to drive user engagement. So the more you could derive about a user, the more you could analyze about a user, the more happier the user would be. And that was your main goal at the end of the day. Where does data analytics fit in? Data analytics fits into a bigger process known as data science. And if you see the two red boxes which are highlighted on the screen, then data analytics basically fits into those two places where you're able to identify few things from the data, and then you're able to derive business insights and visualize your findings. Right? That's when analytics is used primarily. Now, as I was saying before, and this is the reason I did the survey as well, was that I can analyze using two important tools which are part of the analytics space. One is visualization and one is storytelling. Now, what are these two things? Visualization is very simple. Everybody knows about it. Everybody probably sees it on a day-to-day basis. Visualization is nothing but the presentation of data in a graphical format. Right? So if I give you a storybook with all text versus if I give you a storybook with pictures, you will obviously prefer the one which has some pictures because they are better understood, they are more colorful to look at, and things like that. Right? Data visualization comes in many forms, so you don't specifically need to stick to a form. That's why we have a huge variety. And all these visualizations can help you answer multiple questions. So things like when, why, what, who, where, all these questions can be generally answered with the help of data visualization. So this slide basically summarizes that we have so many different forms of data visualization. It can be used to answer many business questions. The second component which is present as part of analytics is storytelling. And what does storytelling mean and why is it important? Storytelling is something which we have been doing or listening to from we were a kid, right? Our parents used to tell us stories. Today we tell stories to our kids. Tomorrow the kids will tell stories back to us or to our kids or to their kids. So what do you tell as part of the story? You tell, you talk about something which happened, through a book or through images and all of these things. And the reason you tell stories is because you want somebody to remember something. And if they're able to remember that something, then stories leave a meaning, leave an impact. And that's the thing we're looking for. And it matters because it gives data meaning. It simplifies a lot of things, because storytelling is something that, if I tell you, you'll remember. It crystallizes takeaways, meaning that you are basically very concise about what you do. And lastly, you tell stories to sell something. So at the end of the day, the main objective of telling stories is to convince people. And before you start doing all this, you should have a clear goal in mind. The goal should be such that it is aligned to the needs of the organization, and you should have the data required to achieve that goal. Now, always the focus when you're doing data analytics is the audience. So make sure that whatever you're doing with respect to analytics always aligned to the audience. So if you're doing something for sales, make sure that whatever story you tell, whatever analytics you do is for sales. You don't want to include other pieces from logistics, from finance, from housekeeping, from backend, all of these things. You don't want to do that, right? Now, whenever we do storytelling, there are four important elements to take care about. Number one is the way it's done, right? That's why we call it the art of storytelling. So the way it's done. Now, in the way it's done, visual perception plays a key role, because the more accurately you represent something, the more accurately somebody's going to understand. So if you are not representing something accurately, then people won't understand. And it's often said that when you show somebody some image, they're going to react 10 times faster, and they're going to basically remember it for a longer time as well. And that's why people often tell you, why don't you show me a photo, why don't you show me a photo instead of describing. And that's the exact reason why. Second thing is, know why you're doing it. So in the case that you don't know why you're doing it, I think that's the point for you to take a pause, revisit your purpose, revisit your objective, and know your data in and out. So you are the owner of what you're doing, so you should be knowing the data more efficiently. Craft your message very wisely, because as I was saying before, the objective of analytics is to answer questions. And if you're not able to answer questions, then your analytics is of no use. Okay. So you can answer a lot of different questions based on the data, but make sure to do it upfront. And the last one is, you got to use the right tools, the right methods to be able to do this. If you do not have the right tools and the right methods, then it's going to be a problem, right? Because you won't be generating the right efficiency, you won't be able to create the things you need, and so on. So summarizing what the four elements are, what you need to understand is that the goal is to basically move from simple charts to visual data stories, which would improve both the narrative as well as the focus on the audience, right? And if you are at any one of this junction, then you've got to move towards visual data stories. That's where the aim is. Now, how do we know you're not telling an effective story? Well, it's very simple. If people are staring at you, like there's no tomorrow, it means that you're not telling an effective story. It means that people don't understand you, right? Sometimes people ask too many questions. Now, there can be two reasons why people ask too many questions. Either that they're very curious, or they haven't understood anything. So if they haven't understood anything and they're going to question you, it's not the best thing, because they're starting to question the validity of the data. They're starting to question why you're doing something, you've not explained it properly, right? Third is that they're having difficulty retaining information. They have uncertainty about what you're going to do with that data, what you're presenting, and also why data matters. So if you have doubts when people ask you a question on why something matters, then they'll know that you're not doing an effective job. I mean, at the end of it all, the main goal is to take decisions. And we take decisions by deriving something called insights. And when we uncover insights from the data, we are going to take decisions based out of this insights. And once we take decisions, we take actions. And that's the main purpose of actually getting the data and doing all of this. And insights are important because at the end of the day, it helps us, create new ideas. It helps us improve business productivity, improve the business functions, identify customer needs, and so on. So there are multiple reasons why insights are important. I'll give you a small example of, insights and recommendations and finding, which is what the process is all about. So if all of you have seen Netflix, right, and even for those who haven't, Netflix is an application which helps you see online content, which helps you see content basically. And what Netflix found was that customers, a lot of customers who were using Netflix would not basically see the entire video. They would see about 90 to 95%. So they went to the business team, they went to the team and they asked, hey, can you tell us what part of the video people are not watching? So the business team responded and said the parts they are not watching are the title, role, and end credits. And that was the insight which they gathered. So the recommendation given by the business now to the software development team was that why don't you add two buttons, one skip intro button at the start and one move to the next episode at the end. And why don't you share this with the people and see how they respond? So as of today, these buttons exist and we use them quite frequently. Right? So we skip, we go to next episode. All of these things are something we use. So this was a decision taken by the team based on an insight which was discovered. Again, traced back to the data. And so the data is where things start becoming, more important. So why do we tell stories? We tell stories because, at the end of the day, they're emotional. That's what I was talking about earlier. Stories are memorable to keep, right? And because, memories are something which are always ingrained. And thirdly, stories are impactful. So they always leave a lasting impact. If I'll give you a very, very funny example. If today, I'm discussing with my friend about, my college life, and I tell him some of the naughty stuff we did during the college. Next time something comes up, your friend is going to remember and he's going to point that out, saying, hey, I know you did that during college. So why do you think he remembers? He remembers because of the way you're telling it. It creates an impact. It has memories. It's attached. So these are things you can relate to, right? So that's important. So at this point, why don't we do a very, very quick activity? Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to type on the chat, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word money? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this once the chats come in. So just go ahead and type on the chat the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word money. Dollar, okay. Dollar sign, a money bill, financial well-being, bank, job. Okay, what else? Rich, investment stability. Okay. Okay. Happiness, assurance. Big house. Okay. Green. Okay. Money can be a lot of colors. True. Um, okay. So the reason I ask you this, and you can see it for yourself on the chat as well. All of you are giving me different answers. Is that one word can be perceived in many ways, right? So I can tell you money, and you can perceive it in many ways. You can say big house, dollar sign, dollar bill, very important, assurance, happiness, stability. So all of you look at things differently. Okay. And what I do is I often tell people to draw this out when it's a face-to-face session. And I ask them, can you draw it out for me? People will draw a burger, people will draw a t-shirt, people will draw a dollar bill. So the basic idea is that the representation is different. And when the representation of the same thing is different for different people, it's a problem, right? Because people can perceive the same thing in many different ways. And if what you do in the analytics space allows people to perceive these things in many different ways, then you're going to have a tough time. And you want people to perceive everybody to perceive the same thing. If not, it's going to be a problem. Now, today we're going to talk about two popular analytics tools. We're going to talk about Microsoft Excel. We're going to talk about Microsoft Power BI, and that's where um, we start doing some of the analytics and visualization. We're going to spend a little more time on Power BI than on Excel because a lot of us could be familiar with Excel already. But nonetheless, we'll do a quick run through and then we'll transition over. Quick check on the chat. How many of you are Excel users? And how many of you have been using it from, let's say, 3 to 4 years or 5 years? And just quickly tell me on the chat, how many of you here are, everyday Excel users or frequent Excel users? 10 years Excel user, okay. Every day, a lot of Excel. Every work day. That's a very good answer. Every work day, so weekend no working. That's nice. I like that. Okay, good. So a lot of things are, frequent Excel users. Okay, a lot of people are frequent Excel users. Weekdays. Okay. So I'm not going to delve too much into Excel, but you all know that Excel is quite a powerful tool. It's not to be taken very lightly. You can use it a lot for different analytical activities, and as part of Excel, you're capable of doing a lot of things. You have a lot of tools. You have a lot of ways you can automate stuff. You can do dashboards and reports. You can do data entry. You can do some analysis like statistical analysis. You can create charts and graphs, and you can use it as a database. So all of these things are things you can do with Excel. Now, Power BI is another tool which which for people who are using Excel is a natural transition. For people who are not using Excel, also can use it because it's quite easy. Is basically a tool which uses your data to derive insights through visualizations and graphs, and then pass it on to the end users. Okay. Now, Power BI is a very good tool which helps you access data, to clean and match your data, to explore your data better through visualizations and charts, create dashboards, create reports, and add custom visualizations, and also to create a story at the end of the day by sharing this with people. Okay. Now, Power BI sits hand in hand with Excel because it provides certain things which are very relatable between Excel and Power BI. And it integrates very well with Excel. And you can also create things like these using Power BI, right? So let's go and see both of these with a small demo, and I'll actually show you how these work, right? So let's quickly get to that and let's see what we need to do there. We're going to be taking a sales data. We're going to be taking a sample sales data, and in that data, we're going to try to analyze and plot a few things, right? What are we going to be analyzing and sharing? We're going to do simple, metrics like sales and profit, total sales and profit. We will be analyzing certain things like, sales trend, sales by different, like the country, category, and so on. And we're going to do this both across Excel and Power BI. So we're going to try to do the same thing in Excel. We're going to try to do the same thing in Power BI, and we're going to try to create something which looks like this at the end of the day in both of them, right? So let's get to that, and then we'll see how we can essentially do it across both of them. Okay. Let's start by looking at the data first. That's where it all starts, right? The data. And another thing is, if any of you have any questions, just put it up on the chat, and I will answer those questions as soon as I, see them. Okay. So feel free to do that. Now, what does our data tell us? Our data has a few things. Okay. It's sales data. So it's got things like orders, when was the order placed, when was the order shipped. It's got things like, who was the customer who essentially bought or placed the order. It has things like, where is the customer from, uh, and what product did he order. So, what are the product names, what is the category, subcategory, and ultimately, what are the sales for that order. So sales along with the profit and shipping cost. Now, this is it's not very, very big data, but it's got a few things we can work with. Now, if I wanted to analyze this data in Excel, I'm going to do it through one of two ways, right? Number one is I either, manually go and sit and start writing functions here. And I say, okay, what is the sum of sales? Who was my customer? Who bought the most and all of these things. Then I'm going to have a hard time and spend a lot of time essentially trying to figure out, doing the analytics, trying to figure out what my boss needs. It's going to take a long time. So I try to adopt some easier methods like pivot tables, for example. And by doing pivot tables, what I essentially get is I can get things like, okay, what are the sales across different countries? Okay, I can get things like, what is my sales across different time periods? What are the sales by category? Now, all of this can be achieved by doing pivot tables. Now, for those of you who are not Excel users and don't know what pivot tables is, think of pivot tables as a way to summarize your data using all the different columns from your data. Okay. And the way you summarize it is basically by, choosing what you want to see against what. It's as simple as that. Now, from each of these pivot tables, what you can do is you can, at the end of the day, you can create a chart. And each chart can then be taken and, placed in something known as a dashboard. And in this dashboard, one of the things you'll notice is that, okay, I do have all the charts, but there are a few things which are missing. And we'll talk about the missing piece here. The missing pieces are, number one, interactivity. Right? So I don't have very good interactivity between each of these charts. And what are the charts I have? I have the metrics like total sales and profits. I have the sales trend, which is across time. I have the sales across country, profit across country, and sales by category. Okay. Now, as I was saying, the first thing is lacking is interactivity. Second thing is I have to spend quite a bit of time trying to make this look better. Okay, if I'm not a natural designer, I'm not, very friendly with colors and all of these things, it's going to take a long time for you to design this efficiently. Third thing which is missing is that, the amount of visuals you have is basically restricted a lot to only these. So you only have a few visuals here which you can essentially plot. And beyond this, if you want to do something, it becomes very difficult to do. Now, most Excel users would end up using pivot tables in some form, and they would try to analyze the data. But when you get to the dashboard, you can essentially say a few things. You can say things like what the total sales are. You can say, okay, my sales is increasing in 2014 as compared to the other years. You can talk about which category has sold the most. But when you want to dive a little bit deeper, it starts becoming more difficult and difficult. A second problem with Excel is, okay, the amount of data I have here is just about 51,000 rows. Now, 51,000 rows is not very big data. Now, the moment you start adding lots of data, your Excel starts becoming slower and slower. You can add slicers to get interactiveness. You'll have to start connecting the slicers to different pivots. And if you make a mistake, then you'll have to redo that thing. You'll have to see where the mistake is and then redo that. So yes, slicers do help add a little bit of interaction, but again, you have to make those connections manually and all of these things. So Excel, as I was saying, is not very simple in order to decorate and create something very fancy. But at the same time, it's not supposed to be taken lightly, because at the end of the day, it can create something like this. Okay, it can create stuff which are useful at the end of the day, using certain functions, certain operations which you can do within Excel. But my aim for today is, not essentially just talk about Excel or talk about Power BI. It's basically talk about the process and which tool is better in what, right? For example, if you have small data like this, you could essentially just use Excel to probably solve the problem. You wouldn't need to use any other tool. But when it comes to scaling, when you want to start, moving with more data, then my recommendation would ideally be to start moving toward better tools such as Power BI, which can actually do a lot of things internally and can work with a larger amount of data as compared to Excel. You try giving Excel 1 gigs of data and you see whether it doesn't burn out your PC. Okay. And I give you a guarantee that it'll first take you a long time to open that data, and then it'll take you a long time to further do anything on it. Right? So that's some of the problems which Excel has at the end of the day. But let's not spend too much time on Excel, because all of you said you were good Excel users and been using Excel from 8 years, 10 years. So I don't need to educate you on the Excel part. But let's talk a little bit more about Power BI, because that's the focus of the day, and that's the focus of the area which the things we do involve. So let me quickly go to that, and what we'll be doing is we'll be trying to replicate the same dashboard there, or the same report there. We're going to create the same things, but we're going to try to do it a little better, in the sense that it looks much better than this. Okay. And when I do a few things there, then you'll probably say, I can't do this on Excel. This is probably very difficult and time consuming. Okay? Let's see what all we can do there. So if you look at my screen, this is how the Power BI tool looks, and this is how the Power BI canvas looks. Okay. So it's essentially blank, and you have to start creating things. Okay. Now, like you do with Excel, you can essentially get in data from multiple sources. It could be Excel, it could be SQL, it could be a text file web, and you have around 200 different sources from where you can get the data. Now, for the sake of the session, what I've done is I have imported the same data inside here, and you can see on my right-hand side that you have all the columns already present there. Okay. Now, what we're essentially going to do is we're going to use these columns to start creating some of the things I was mentioning. So first things, let's create our metrics, okay, which are total sales and total profit. So how do we do that? It's quite simple. So you see you have sales here. We can drag the sales to the canvas. It automatically plots a chart. Okay, you don't need any pivots. You don't need anything of that sort. It's an aggregated value already, and it plots a chart for you. But sales is a metric. You want to see it in big, bold numbers. You don't want to see it on something like this. Okay, no problem. So what we say is, okay, let me convert this to a card visual. And a card visual then automatically creates a big number like this and tells me, 12.64 million is the sales, right? Very simple, plain and bold, because that's what the business generally asks for. Now we can do a quick border around this to, decorate, since we said we'll be decorating it a little bit. I'll put a few rounded edges, and that should be kind of sufficient. If I want, I can add probably some light shades, anything of that sort. I might probably not want to do it now, but let's just keep it at white just for now. Let's place it here. The next thing I want to add is total profit. Okay, and total profit is something which you're going to be doing in a similar fashion. So you're just going to drag profit, you're going to convert it to a card visual, and we're going to add a border. And you see that in a matter of a few minutes, I have got this in very easily, and I'm just trying to decorate it to be a little better as well, right? So we're not essentially creating any extra pivots and stuff like that here. Okay, so I'll drag this here and resize this, put it back here, just make sure the sizes are correct. Okay. Now, one of the other things with Excel is alignment is sometimes a problem. So, in order to align, you got to make sure things are correct sizes and all of this. It's quite tedious sometimes. The next thing we need is sales by country. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is we need the sales first of all. So I just drag the sales here. And secondly, I need the country. So I want to just drag the country into the same box here, right, with the sales. And you'll notice immediately that, I have a bar chart which represents the sales by country. But one of the things is, I have 196 countries in the world. So it's going to be very difficult for me to read that on a bar chart. So I'd rather prefer to have a simple table, something like this, which will give me better readability because I can just scroll through and see, what different countries are. Now, let's say, for example, I wanted to add profit to this. So I can just drag in the profit and I can put it into the same area, and you see that it adds a profit column here. Now, for those who are, Excel users and a lot about conditional formatting and stuff like that, the best part about, Power BI is that all those things from Excel have been brought over here. So let's say, for example, I click on the format tab and I click on conditional formatting. Now you can see that I can do conditional formatting for different columns. So for example, I can do it for sales. Let's say the conditional formatting I want to do for sales is I want to bring the data bars on, okay, just as an example. Now, data bars on basically implies that the bar gives me the relative value with respect to the maximum value. And you see that I have it, easily populated here just by a click of a button. You can do a lot of other things similar to how you do it on Excel in the conditional formatting here, right? So you don't essentially need to relearn the same thing. And this is very simply, sales and profit by country. You can keep adding more and more columns to this, and you don't need to essentially, worry about it expanding and stuff like that. Okay. Now, the total sales and profit numbers, sales by country, they're not directly imported as pivot tables in Power BI. We are just importing the raw data into Power BI, and the raw data sits here, similar to Excel. So if you click on the data tab here, it just is like this, similar to Excel. Power BI calculates all of those values on the fly when you create the visualizations. So it does all the aggregations while you're bringing it into the visualizations. So it's quite quick in doing that as well. So it's not only the pivots, it's not only the aggregated values which are here, but it has the raw data completely inside. So it's using the raw data. Now, one of the things which is important from a sales perspective is to know the sales by the date, right? So that we can get the trend of the sales. Now, in order to do that, we're going to take the sales and we're going to take the order date, okay, which is our reference date, which we have for us. And you immediately see that, okay, all the sales have been plotted by the various years, and I can just keep it here. But looking at it in a bar chart is probably not the best way to look at sales. So I'm going to instead choose a line chart from here, and I'll say, okay, I want to look at sales with the help of a line chart. Okay, no problem. Now, similar to Excel, what you can also do is here you can also dive into the different levels. So if you want to essentially dive into the hierarchy to see months, you can click here. It will dive into quarters, months, and even days. So this is something which Excel can also do, and this is something which has been retained here as well. Right? So you don't need to essentially worry about it. Right? So this is a good functionality which Power BI has as well. Now, let me just give this a border as well. And I'm going to say, okay, this is 10 pixels. Okay, and we have something here. Okay, cool. What else can we do on the trend? Okay, let's say that we basically want to add a trend line. Okay, this is something you can do on Excel, but something you can do here as well. So let's say we want to add a trend line. A trend line basically gives us an idea about the growth or decline of something. So this says that, okay, I have over the years, I have a slight increase in sales because you can see an increasing trend line. Now, what you can also do is you can do things, for example, like forecast. So if you have dates, one of the things that people tend to do is, can we forecast the sales into the future? Right? So we can add a forecast line and we can say, I want to forecast into the future and I want to forecast for the next, let's say 6 months, or let's say 5 months, 3 months, 3 points. And I say, okay, let me color my forecast line with maybe something else, something like this. Okay. Now, what this basically tells you very easily is that, okay, the forecast, for the next 3 periods would essentially be these values based on your historical sales. Okay, this is very convenient because it also uses sophisticated algorithm internally to help us do this. So it's not doing simple moving averages and stuff. It's using some sophisticated algorithms like ARIMA and others inside to help us do this. We can add data labels to this for more clarity. So we can switch data labels on, and that basically tells us the values on the line as well, just to give us a little more clarity on how the data looks. Okay, stretch this up till the end to make it a little more clear. Now, let's try to add a couple of more things. Okay, the first thing which we need to add is we want to add a sales by category, right? And if you want to add a sales by category, it's quite simple. We say sales, and we can just get category in, and we say I want to represent this not by a bar chart, but I want to represent this by a donut chart, something like this. Okay. Now this donut chart basically gives me a bifurcation between the different categories of product, like technology, furniture, and office supplies in this case, and tells me, what is the respective sales in each of those categories. Now, at the end, what we're going to draw is we're going to do a chart for profit by location, because one of the things which we want to see is we want to see like a map or a geospatial visualization of how our profits are faring across the different countries. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag profit. We're going to drag country, and we're going to say we want a map visual for this. Okay, and this visual is basically called a symbol map. Okay, you can have either a filled map or a symbol map. Let's keep it to this for a bit. Okay, so you can easily scroll into the different parts of the map. You can actually see all of these things very easily. You can hover over to figure out what the numbers are and so on. This is something you cannot do on Excel very easily because the default map which Excel has is not that good. Okay, we say fine. Okay, we are seeing the profit by country. Okay, give me a sec while I clear that out. Now, can we add another value to this, another field to this, to make it a little more informative? And we've got the profit, but can we get the profit by category, for example, or can we get the profit by shipping mode? Let's try to do that. So what we do is we can take shipping mode, and shipping mode is basically nothing but okay, is my shipping mode 1 day delivery? Is it first class? Is it standard class? What is it? Right. So I can take that and I can, put it inside legend of this map. Okay. Just take that, put it inside the legend. And what you'll immediately see is you'll notice that all the different bubbles have now been redistributed based on the ship mode. So for example, let's say for Mexico, the standard class ship mode gets the highest profit. The the one after that, the first class ship mode gets lower profit, and so on, right? So this kind of visualization where you can actually key in another value, another extra dimension to a map is something which is very good because it can immediately tell us what the distribution is amongst those different things. Now, one of the things is that you see across all of this, I haven't really added anything for any interactivity or anything of that sort, for example, right? So by default, what Power BI does is it creates interactivity among all the elements which are there on the report. So if I can simply click anything on this report and all the elements will interact with each other very efficiently, okay, without doing anything behind the scenes. So I can just, let's say for example, click on United States here. And you'll notice that now all the visuals are filtered for United States. So right from the sales to profit, to the trend of sales, to the forecast, to the category, to the map view, everything has been changed based on the United States. So similarly, I can click on, let's say, Afghanistan, and that will basically again give me the sales across that region, right? So it's basically that easy in terms of getting the interaction to work between different visuals. So I can not only click on this, but I can click on anything in the other chart. So I can say, okay, I want to see everything based on category, which is technology. So I can just click on that donut and everything is filtered based on that category. I can do it for all the others as well, right? So this is basically one of those things in Power BI which is very useful, and you can actually build this very, very quickly without spending too much time. And even as a person who doesn't know Power BI or doesn't know Excel, it's very easy to pick this up because you see it's very intuitive, it's very interactive, and all you need to know is, okay, what kind of visual do I need, what is the data which is there. Okay, now nothing is complete without a without a title to the report. So I'm going to just take a text box and I'm just going to say this is sales report. Okay, and I'm probably going to just increase the font size, say 28. Probably choose some color here, and what I can do is I can take this up here, put up here, right? Now once I've done this, then you see that practically my report has been built very, very quickly without me doing much effort, and this I can now present to somebody. Now how will I say, how can I share this report? There are multiple ways. Number one is I can basically export this to a PowerPoint, to a PDF, any of those forms, and then share it across to somebody. Secondly, if you as an organization are using Power BI, then what I can do is I can essentially just publish the report onto the Power BI service, and I can ask somebody to collaborate with me on the service itself. So there are multiple ways. You can also save this as a file and send it across as an email to somebody. They can open it up at their end and look at the report. So multiple ways to do that. You got to choose what's fit for your organization. Right. So if I actually dive into the different details, there are so many things you can do with Power BI, but I'll leave that for a time when we're actually learning more about it, and we can actually pick up those things and do it here. But if you see in this, in a short amount of time, the amount you can do with respect to some of the other tools, I think it's pretty convenient, right? It will be interactive only if you publish to the cloud, and um, not if you export it as a PPT only. I mean, it's similar to something like Tableau or something else. When you export it to a static format, you cannot interact, right? So you can interact only when you have it in the required format. Okay, so for some of the questions related to validation and raw data and all of that, what you can do is, okay, with respect to the question on can we connect multiple data sources, you can import multiple data sources. You can create the relationships here, in the relationship manager, and create the model you require for the data, and you can use multiple raw data to create your reports. So that's not a problem. And how do we do validation and all of that? So what you can do is, in order to do validation and all of those things, when you're importing data into Power BI, you have something called as a, similar to what Excel has. It can go through a Power Query editor, and then in the Power Query, you can basically check for your validation, and you can then import it, right? So that's something which is also done within Power BI. Okay, cool. So basically, my idea was to show you a little bit on the difference between how you can do something quickly on this versus in some of the other tools. And this is basically, from my experience, right? It's the best part about it is that as you scale up the data to a certain extent, it doesn't get slower and slower. Okay, you still have the same level of interactivity. You have the speed at which things move. Even with 1 gigs, 2 gigs of data. So that's absolutely not a problem to do. And I'm talking about when the version of Power BI which is available for everybody. I'm not even talking about the commercial licensed version. How can we integrate real life data, not an exported Excel file? I don't understand what you mean by real life data. Uh, if you're talking about live data feeds, then this is basically connected to the source. So you can, as I was saying earlier, you have more than, okay, so you have more than 100 to 200 connectors. So if you look at this, you can see that you have many different connectors here which you can directly connect to. So in case your ERP system is like Dynamics or something of that sort, then it can directly connect to that. If it's sitting on SAP, you can connect to it, and so on. If not, you can just simply, uh, create a query, and you can give your connection string and connect to it. So if you know the details of your source, then you can directly connect to it using a query. So either ways, right? Because there is a lot of integration which can be done, integration to different sources which has been done. So you can essentially use some of them. So given some time, you can explore what the different sources are and which you can connect to. Okay. So, with that said, let me, head back to my PPT. Let me do a few things, and then I'll open it up to Q&A, and then, you can ask me a few questions during that period. Okay. So the basic difference which we saw, right? Again, my intention was not to say one is better than the other. My intention was to basically say which ones are to be used for what purpose, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're doing some analytics or when you're doing storytelling and visualization, tools which are better suited to do that should be used, where things are faster, things are more people perceive things more visually better. uh, Excel, though it may be very powerful in certain areas, does lack in certain areas like this, which would take a longer amount of time at the end of the day. So you would want to basically increase productivity by using tools like this. Now, obviously, one of the things which, whenever you're using any visualization tool, you should be careful about is, how are you using the best practices of the tool, right? So, for example, when you're building visualizations on Power BI, you could essentially use, uh, you know, things like templates. You can use, uh, designers to get in to create certain things which are visually very good for you. And all of these are considered to be fairly good ways to build dashboards and reports. But whenever you are incorporating certain things, in visualization, then you don't want to essentially create something like this, or you don't want to be creating, 3D charts and stuff like that, which are not legible at all, right? At the end of the day, I know, you know, and all of us who are Excel users here know Excel has a functionality for three-dimensional charts. But if you don't use it at the right place, or if you use it for certain things like this, you're not going to be getting the right uh, result and information or insight from it. Again, if you start building dashboards like these, then you're going to have problems with your bosses, because they would not appreciate you building something like this. It's too messy, there's too much of information, a lot of random colors thrown around, a lot of different domains brought into this, so not the best thing to do. um, how has analytics in the industry progressed, right? uh, Analytics in the industry has been there from a long time. But the things which have changed are the adoption of analytics for data which is at scale, or a lot of data. Like today, you don't have 1,000 rows or 5,000 rows of data. You have millions of rows of data, and that's where analytics needs to start stepping up the game. So in the industry, a lot of industries have adopted use of certain tools like this to do analytics for their data. It's said that 90% of enterprise analytics and business professionals, they say data analytics are key to the organization's digital transformation initiatives. So if you're embarking on the digital transformation journey, or you're upscaling your uh, your tools, then choosing the right analytics tools is one of the key things. The other thing also is that data driven organizations, they are more likely to acquire and retain customers, and all of us know that for a fact, because you can provide more data, you can provide more insight, you can take better actions, right? So that is something which all of us can relate to. And also, one of the things is that by 2020, which is this year, there are a lot of uh, companies which have embarked on the journey, and there are so many different roles that have opened up for analytics, that we need to start learning and to fit into that role. So if we don't know something, then it will not be we won't be able to fit into that role at all, right? So that's the main idea behind learning something like this. Now, for my part of the presentation, I just wanted to give you an idea about what analytics is and different tools like Excel and Power BI which can be done. What we do, and that's all I'm going to be presenting and showing you for today. But apart from that, what we do is, for people who are interested to learn more on Power BI, for example, we, along with Informatics, we do certain workshops to help you upskill yourself in Power BI, Excel, and a lot of other tools. For those who are interested, one of our upcoming workshops on this is on 15th of July, which is completely hands-on and intensive. And it's an 8-hour long course where you're going to be learning, for those users who are beginners of Power BI, you'll learn things from getting the data from multiple sources, to creating data models, to validating and cleaning the data, up to building reports and sharing them. So that's the entire spectrum. So if you want more information about this, who do you reach? The details are on your screen. You can reach them. You can ask them for more information. You can directly call them up if you need to. They'll provide you with more information. That's it from my part. And what the session is about. We have about 15 minutes for Q&A, and we'll kind of open it up to that. So if any of you have any questions, you can ask me the questions. Uh, you know, if you don't have any questions, then I want to thank you for coming to the session and for listening to me. I hope it was helpful for you to understand a little more about the tools and how analytics can be used. So do ask any questions you have on the chat. I'll be answering the questions for the next 15 minutes. Okay. So please go ahead with any of your questions. What is the difference between using Tableau and Power BI? Tools coming from different people, number one. Power BI is slightly on the quicker side when you need to create visuals. Tableau, on the other hand, has better visuals in some cases, but it's still, quite a task to create them. Takes a longer amount of time. Secondly, Tableau does not have good data modeling capabilities at this point. They might bring it on in the future, but Tableau does not have um, good data model capabilities. Power BI, on the other hand, is built to handle data and has good data modeling capabilities. So you can actually bring in data, create from multiple sources, and mesh them up within Power BI very efficiently to be able uh, to basically be able to build up a data model. So there are some differences where Tableau falls short, Power BI is better. In some cases, there are, like I said, some visualizations may be better on Tableau. But personally, when it comes to time, Power BI is better. Power BI is cheaper than Tableau as well, and it integrates into the ecosystem of Microsoft, right? So if you're an Excel user, Power BI easily integrates and fits into that, um, you know, fits into it very efficiently. Whereas on the other hand, Tableau would be more of a learning curve if you don't know Tableau and you're using Excel. Are there any limitations if I'm using on-prem version of Power BI? So Power BI has a desktop version and it has a service. Okay, so the desktop version of Power BI will not allow you to share reports with other people directly. You will have to have the service in order to share reports. Okay. Apart from that, in terms of limitations, there are a couple of things. In Power BI desktop, you cannot export to a PPT, for example, directly. You'll have to publish the report on service and export to a PPT, a presentation. Power BI desktop can export to a PDF, more efficiently. So some of these are there. Power BI desktop, there's a free version which anybody can use, or if you have Microsoft 365, you'll have a Power BI Pro license if you have a Microsoft E5 or E3 license. So those are some of the things which you can and cannot do on Power BI. Apart from that, there's not much differences between the desktop version and the service version. It's probably a license based. Power BI starts with a free version. It has a pro version. It has a premium version. So it is license based like Tableau. If you need to go to, if you need to collaborate with other people, if you just want to use it at an individual level, you can just use the Power BI desktop free version. That should be sufficient for you to learn and pick up Power BI. If you want to use it at an organizational level, yes, then you'll have to obviously purchase licenses and all of those things. So Power BI, we don't say it's on-prem. We just say it's a desktop version or a service. That's basically how we refer to it. So if you're collaborating with different people, um, when you're collaborating with different people, all the people who are collaborating need a license, be it the creators or be it the readers. Because if you're sharing something across Power BI service, then in order for them to see the Power BI service, see it on the Power BI service, they'll have to, essentially have the license as well. So we would be sending a recording of the presentation, yes. So how do I export as a PPT? I think somebody had a question earlier. Is once I publish the report, okay, so this is an example report I have, from earlier, something I did earlier. Here you can just export to PowerPoint, and you can choose to export either, let's say, after clicking on something, or you can choose to export, just with default values. And basically, once you export it, it will just download a PowerPoint, and then you can essentially see that. But you can export, as I said, you can export to PowerPoint once you're essentially, published. Once you've essentially published the report, that's when you can export. If you have not published the report, then you can only export to PDF. You can export to PDF on the free version. Yes. So if you actually see this one, which I just built, here you can just say file, export, and you can export to PDF. And this will automatically export a PDF. It will generate, it will take all the pages which are there on your report. And no, so PDFs are not interactive. So PDFs are generally not interactive. It's just going to be static. If you want it to be interactive, you will have to obviously use the service. For example, like this. So you see it's exported to a PDF and given it to you. Obviously, you can click and you can, certain values can be clicked on and then exported. So you can export it for certain scenarios as well. Right? Okay, awesome. Any other questions from anybody else? It's definitely a good tool to use, and for beginners, it's quite useful as well. So it's not very difficult to pick up. Okay, any other questions? Okay, again, if you need more information about it, the contact details are there on the screen. You can pick it up from the contact details. and you can you can contact us further for more information. Okay, cool. So if there are no more questions, thanks for joining in, everybody. I'm still going to be here for about 10 minutes. So in case you have any more questions, I can answer them. You can clean up the data directly on Power BI. You don't need to clean up the data on Excel. Power BI gives you something called Power Query, similar to how Excel has it. You can directly use Power Query on Power BI. You can create the entire cleaning pipeline on Power BI itself. Okay, everybody, thanks for joining in. Yep, no worries. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.